Hey everyone, almost Christmas time. Happy Monday to everyone. Hope your day was as busy with fun family cheer as mine was. We finally got a little apartment for our 100-year-old grandmother today. Got the keys and everything. I'm so excited. It's been going on since May, half a year to, please take my money. um, so greetings to Liet FX. Maybe that's Little Fox. I don't know. Yang V's and Karchung over on Instagram. Not sure how to see the people on YouTube and LinkedIn, but greetings to all of you tonight. So tonight, I want to talk about big data and how it's breaking down barriers, how this can be your path to a purpose-driven digital health world, a purpose-driven digital health career, a place where you can use your real clinical brain, fully and actually get paid what you're worth, that sort of thing. So I wanted to share, like, when I was at the bedside. So yeah, I'm a nurse. And I had just finished a 12-hour shift, which is a 14-hour shift, right? Because you show up early, you leave late, and there's more charting to do at the end of the shift, that sort of thing. And I'd spent the whole 12-hour shifts taking care of 6 patients. And at the end of the shift, I reflected on it. I'm like, there are millions of us out there who can't even get to a hospital. And that frustrated me because I had worked really hard. I'd done my very best, but there's still people who maybe were in more need than the ones I was taking care of, that they couldn't even get to me. I couldn't do anything about it. So tonight we're going to take a look at big data for underserved communities and why this is the moment that clinical professionals like us need to position ourselves in this space. I'm going to show you how your protection instincts in the clinical space and your clinical judgment are worth $100, $200 per hour in this field. So if you've ever felt limited by how many patients you can impact in one shift, just drop me a yes in the comments. Let me know. So here's the sort of hidden crisis nobody's talking about. There's about 4 billion people globally who lack access to basic health care. I'm not talking about MRIs here. I'm talking about basic health care. Not specialized, just regular old. And in 2024, so actually in 2025, we're seeing rural, even American communities where the nearest clinic is hours away by car, and urban neighborhoods where hospitals are too expensive and too overloaded to even be an option. So it used to matter that you lived way out there. Now, maybe you live right in the middle of, and you still can't get access to anything. In Pakistan, where I'm consulting again and where I've lived and worked before, I watched mothers walk 3 days to reach a health clinic. 3 days. And, they were trying to get vaccines for their little ones, that sort of thing. And they had to go on a 3-day walk just to get to the hospital. That's 3 days back. That's a week just to get a couple of basic vaccinations. That's unconscionable. And I thought about all those policies I had to follow in my hospitals, policies that made sense in theory but ignored the reality of people's lives. Well, big data is changing that. Transformation is happening now. A report from McKinsey this year showed that big data initiatives in developing nations reduced maternal mortality by 15%. That's not just a number. Those are actual people. Those are actually women, right? And think about that. That data saved lives where buildings and doctors couldn't reach. They don't even exist. The real connection here is it's that feeling when a patient coded and you knew something was wrong hours before. You saw they were going downhill. You couldn't prove it, but you just knew it. That clinical intuition, that's exactly what big data projects need. Someone who can ensure that the algorithm flags real risks and not just some weird statistical anomalies stuff for some algorithm. Now is the time. Now is your window. The AI mandate is coming. Keeps me up at night. In August of this year, the EU AI Act came into force, and this is creating massive compliance needs for healthcare AI. Companies are scrambling for clinical professionals who understand both patient safety and technology. And let me tell you, your understanding technology does not have to be under the hood. It can be what can it do for me kind of understanding. That's all you really need. This reminds me of way back when, 2009, 2017, the EHR initiative. Everybody's got to get an EHR. I watched nurses who had positioned themselves early become clinical informaticists, earning $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, or more. And those who waited, well, they got stuck doing mandatory computer training for the same old salary, using the systems set up by the colleagues who were no better clinically. They had just done a better job of positioning themselves. So this year we saw investments of $9.9 billion, so close to 10, with big data for health equity as a top focus. California's safety net health plans are using AI to identify high-risk patients in underserved populations. Johns Hopkins has just launched their AI for Health Equity series. This isn't theoretical stuff. These things are happening right now. And I'm seeing job postings, chief clinical information officers, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, remote patient monitoring consultants, $150, $200 an hour, healthcare AI compliance specialists, roles that didn't exist a couple of years ago. They're starting at 120,000. That's just interpreting the rules, making sense of them clinically. And the beautiful part is technology companies cannot replicate your protective instincts clinically. They can't teach someone in 6 months what you learned at 2 a.m. managing critical patients. That's your difference. That's your golden ticket here. For me, I took a break from digital health because I thought, this thing's driving me crazy. I want to do something else. And I went to work for Intel, and I saw just waves of my colleagues get laid off, completely fired. The company globally at Intel had swollen to 100,000, and it was a big mistake. They were overspending, and so they needed to shrink by 20,000. And people who'd worked there for like 10, 15, 20 years, gone. Loyal, hardworking, everything he's supposed to be, and then one day, restructure. Email from an outside consulting firm, poof, gone. That taught me something crucial. Regular old safe employment has the same risk as freelancing, but without the honest competition. At least when you go out on your own in consulting, when they don't need you anymore, you're getting paid 3 times what you would have been paid as an employee. So a little time off doesn't feel too bad. Now I work on projects in places like Pakistan, all over Europe, UK, helping rural communities access specialists through AI and mobile technology. It's called Leapfrog Healthcare. And last month, one of our big data systems identified disease outbreaks before it spread quickly, getting to the thousands. I see the impact. I'm about to adopt a child, and I want that kid to see the legacy from this. I want him to see that I made a difference. Some of you are terrified to leave clinical work. I was. Because I trained so hard for it. I took my boards. I did everything I was supposed to do. And I was really afraid to leave it behind. But which one is scarier? Taking a calculated risk on your own expertise, or staying in a system that caps you and doesn't actually reciprocate your loyalty? And then the good news is, once I got into digital health, it turned out the most important asset that I could possibly have was my clinical brain. It wasn't any of the technical skills that I thought I had to have and go out and get and make sure you know how the computer works. No, They had other people who were better at that, and that's all they could do. They had no clinical judgment whatsoever. Um, the biggest myth in healthcare is I'm just a nurse. I'm just a PT. I'm just a respiratory therapist. I'm just a rad tech. And let's just destroy that. So when I started consulting, a health system paid me 18,000, no, sorry, that was 15,000 for my first month's worth of work, which validated their systems and their analytics. And I couldn't believe it was like so much money. And I thought, this has got to be some kind of mistake. They're going to like put me through the ringer. No, they just paid it like regular old stuff. I had escaped actual regular employment, and I just had a hard time accepting it. And that, it bought me the ability to say, this algorithm won't work because, insulin access isn't the same in rural communities as urban ones. That one clinical insight saved them from launching systems that would have failed. It was such a small clinical contribution, but from the perspective of all the technical people, oh my God, that's just genius. Your years of patient care are not holding you back. They're a foundation. The question is if you want to build on it. Every time you questioned a medication dosage, every time you knew something wasn't right before you looked at the monitor, every cultural sensitivity you developed, that's exactly what these big data projects need right now. And here's why it matters right now. The window is critical. We're at the stage where clinical input can shape these systems. In 5 years, they'll be deployed, and we'll be trying to fix problems after the fact. This is when the pay is highest. This is when the opportunity to make an impact is highest. This is when you swing the biggest stick. This is our moment to build equity into these systems from the start. So let's talk some numbers. My first year in digital health, that was $180,000. Unbelievable to me. I just was like blown away. Year two, it went up. I went up over 200,000 and then stayed there for like the next 20 years. Just amazing. Many years it was more than 200,000. 200,000 was the floor. But I don't want to swing around too big a number and make it sound like it's, more than it really is or something. Because it's not get rich quick, right? It's make more money than you earn and keep the difference and save it and invest it, that sort of thing. I used the downtime that I had because I wasn't working 12-hour shifts anymore, but I was used to it. I used the downtime to go networking, find more projects, get involved in more things, learn new areas, that sort of thing. And by the time my body felt like it was done with the day, it was longer than the other people had worked, but still way easier than a regular nursing shift. So earning 2-3 times your traditional salary is the equivalent of working 4 months per year at your old job and getting the rest as vacation. So suddenly the risk of freelancing just looks different when you look at it through a different lens. And this year, we're seeing rural healthcare get massive attention. Did you know that 78% of rural healthcare of healthcare.gov enrollees can now access zero premium plans? That policy change has driven huge demand for digital health infrastructure. Someone needs to build those systems, someone with clinical expertise. I've reviewed a proposal today for a new healthcare system in South Africa. And I've told them this is the right way to do it. I've done it bad ways before, and here's what I've learned, and it was deeply insightful and will likely change the arc of the entire grand plan for more than 60 hospitals. So it's real. It's happening right now. I've got my foot in that world, but I also like to pull others into the fray, get other clinical people like me right in the driver's seat. Because clinically speaking, there's nothing special about me. I don't have skills that you lack, that sort of thing. So things that are happening right now that are not sci-fi in the future. In southern Georgia, they upgraded mobile clinics with a satellite internet and 40 tablets so clinicians can enter data in real time while serving migrant farm workers. And that project needed clinical consultants to design all the workflows. In California, Medi-Cal plans on using AI to analyze EHR data and identify high-risk patients in communities that have historically been marginalized. The challenge? Making sure those algorithms don't perpetuate any kind of bias. They're just plain scientific. They're just plain clinical. Who's best positioned to spot that sort of thing? People like us, clinical professionals who've worked with those populations. And I remember I did it when I worked in California. A bunch of migrants who were really quite abused by their employer. Even in mental health, there's a partnership bringing AI-driven cultural responsiveness care to BIPOC communities. Why? Because traditional counseling models don't work when patients don't feel safe with providers who don't understand their experience. Clinical and cultural expertise, boom, now you're in digital health and AI. So how do you do this sort of thing? Well, you make a plan. This is a good roadmap. Month 1 to 3, take some free courses, get some training from someone like me, learn to speak the language. You'll find that it's actually not that complicated. This stuff is nowhere near as complicated as the clinical stuff you've already mastered. After you've gotten some of the language, start looking for some projects. Look for some big data projects right where you work. Volunteer with an NGO or something to serve underserved communities. Document your impact. Make sure that this goes on your resume and your CV. I improve the care pathways, that sort of thing. And that way you start to actually build out a little portfolio. Now you get your first full-blown contract. You start with one contract. Price yourself at $100 an hour. That's a low-hanging fruit. Focus on projects that mean something to you. Focus on projects for underserved populations. Then it builds your CV and your resume towards getting more and more of those. Focus on the things that actually bring you joy instead of somebody else deciding what your job's going to be for that day. And then network. Network at conferences, network online, network with other people who share your goals. Now you're working with people who are excited by the same things you're excited about. And then be open to saying yes. I mean, I've had some weird experiences in consulting. Like my Dubai role, I trained my own replacement and then moved from Dubai to England and worked remotely for another 9 months. Just participating in the meetings and then supporting the person who I had trained to replace me. You create space for growth. That's digital health kind of thinking. That's an abundance mindset that changes your life. So you might be thinking, I don't have any technical skills. Yeah, well, neither did I. I still don't know how to do all the math behind the big data projects. I know what to tell the guys who do, and they can do the math. They can do the programming, and then I can tell them if they've got it right. And my clients paid me for my clinical expertise, not for the technical stuff. They had engineers for that, and they needed me to ensure that their systems wouldn't result in harm to patients. That's the same old, right? Same old nursing. Will you lose your clinical identity? I was really afraid of this going into digital health. I'm like, well, I'm a nurse, and what am I at the other side of this? Some kind of business person? I don't like that. No, this is expanding your clinical impact. It's not abandoning it. You multiply it by 1,000, by 10,000, by 1,000,000. I'm still using my same old clinical judgment all the time, and I'm just applying it to systems that reach thousands instead of 5 or 6. Where do you find these opportunities? For the last 15, almost 20 years, people have found me on LinkedIn and other social networks and just hit me up. Hey, are you free? No, I'm not free right now, but I've got a friend who could do this, that sort of thing. I'm not free right now, but I will be 1st of February. Does that work for you? Those kinds of things. That's where all the consulting work comes from. So I try to showcase myself on those platforms and get people to reach out to me. Now I'm staying home a lot because I intend to adopt a child, and I don't really want to go and do any of the on-site stuff that I used to do. So changing life, and it's keeping pace right there with me. There's no such thing as job security anymore. but there is income security if you're billing 100, $200 an hour and have diversified client relationships. So you have a choice here. Here's where we are. There's 4 billion people who need healthcare access. AI and big data are creating the solutions to that right now, and companies are paying premium rates for clinical professionals who can bridge that gap between technology and human care. So the window is open. It's open now. Your next step, if you're ready to explore your clinical expertise translating into this work, I want to talk to you. So DM me big data or something like that, and let's schedule a call. I'm not going to sell you some course. I'm going to show you exactly what opportunities exist with your background. I do offer coaching, but that may or may not be right for you. We'll see. We'll see what's what. I've hired plenty of coaches over the years, invested a lot of money in myself, and it's really worked out for me. So let's think about your legacy for a second here. You can keep fighting system barriers where you are, one patient at a time, or you can use big data to create healthcare access for millions. Both matter, but only one lets you break generational employment patterns and build the legacy you're capable of actually building. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop them into the comments. Questions about transitioning, questions that may seem like stupid questions. Doesn't matter. I've heard them all before. I've had them all before. So it's okay, whatever you want to ask. And if you're not ready, but you think somebody else is, maybe share this live with them. Let them know what's out there. Let them know there's another path. You can still keep your clinical credentials, keep your clinical credibility, and actually not ever touch a patient again, depending on what you want, you know? So thanks for joining me tonight. It'll be the same time next week. We're going to talk about more of these digital health topics. If you have a particular topic that's just burning a hole, let me know, and I'm happy to cover that. Nobody can know everything about something, but in the past 25 years, I've learned quite a lot. I'm happy to share it, and happy to help all of my brothers and sisters move out of the role that they're in into one that actually brings them more fulfillment and joy. So let me know. And with that, I'll go ahead and bid you good night from England, and I'll see everyone next week on